What's up, guys? It's Lupak here from AlbionTV. I am here in Berlin for a week. I'm at the Sandbox Interactive offices, and I'm very, very lucky to be bringing you guys, with the rest of the team, a series of interviews, exclusive interviews with developers and other people from within the company. This one will be someone that you're very familiar with, someone who's been on camera plenty, and I believe I might even be sitting in his chair. It is, of course, Mr. Robin Henkys himself. A pleasure to see you. And the first time we've sat down like this, I think we've had
yes,
meetings,
absolutely.
and we've had you on my live stream many years ago. But we've never had an interview, I don't think.
We've never sat down in a set and had an interview, no.
You obviously, you are the CEO of Sandbox Interactive, and your journey through the company, you started as a developer.
Well, I mean, I'm CEO and game director, and out of those two titles, I always consider the game director the more important title, because I joined originally as lead designer for Albion Online. I'm not a founding member of the company, as many people might think, but they assume. But I actually joined about a year and a half after the initial team had started on the project. But I came in to kind of guide the very early project into some kind of direction where it would actually turn out to be a game, because initially it was a technical prototype.
Yeah.
It had a vision for what it wanted to be from a sort of core gameplay direction, but it needed somebody to take those ideas and like really shape it into a playable game. And that was my task initially. And then obviously that became a lot more over the years.
Yeah, and we've talked at length about the size of the company then, the size of the company now. And there's obviously been significant challenges as the company grows. Things, not necessarily challenges, but things work differently as a company grows, or triples in size, essentially.
I mean, I think anybody who's like been in a company like that, or who has had a company like that, has run a company like that, experiences those stages of growth, right? Like we started out, like before I joined, it was really just a few people, less than 10 people. I think I'm employee number 13. That's a phase where you can still talk to everybody like regularly every day. And then you go into a phase where maybe like 20, 30 people, you have some department structures, but really like everybody's still very tight. And then obviously as that keeps growing, you have to change how you're working. You're, more and more and more is becoming independent. You have units that maybe don't talk to each other at all anymore.
Yeah.
So you have to think about how do you still keep them connected and in sync and all of that. So yeah, growing a game and growing a company is a very challenging process.
And as a CEO, obviously you have got to be business minded now. But I've always seen you as a game dev that became the CEO, and at heart you are still game focused and player focused. And does that sometimes clash with when you have to be business CEO versus the game CEO?
Yeah, I mean, it constantly clashes, right? Like, I got into video games to make games.
To make games, yeah.
And like, actually, funny story. When I originally got into video games, I didn't think about why I'm doing it.
Yeah.
I just did it. And then at some point when you finish your degree, people start asking you, where do you want to go? Like, where do you want to take this? And then started thinking about that. And my dream back then was, I was like, one day I want to be the guy that talks about the game that he's worked on. And obviously that's worked out in the dev talks.
Exactly,
that dream is fulfilled.
You want my job, it sounds like. You want to be a talky guy.
Pretty much. No, but like, obviously there's a big conflict, or there's some conflict in being just about the game and then being about the business. But I've always seen it that, projects like this, games like this, you cannot make without a lot of money. Right, like you have large teams, lots of people working on these. Plus, actually, people probably underestimate the cost of like technically running these games, right?
Yeah, live service games with the server infrastructure.
Yeah, with like a significant server infrastructure, but not only that, with all the special networking connections, traffic, etc., that you have to pay for. There's a lot of, a pretty hefty operation behind Albion Online now. So I try to basically separate these things pretty hard. And like when I'm in the design and direction mode, I'm not in the business mode. And when I'm CEO mode, I have to think about the business, of course, yeah.
We've sort of said as well, you know, I touched on the fact that you guys have essentially more than tripled in size since I've been first involved with Albion Online. And is there one thing that springs to mind that changed that maybe you didn't expect or you would never have seen coming? Like, is there the biggest difference that maybe you didn't anticipate when growing?
What was a big advantage for us in building this game was that in the core team, we had a lot of people who happened to have the right experience. So I had kind of seen both developments on a very small scale and developments on a pretty big scale with over 100 people. And, you know, in the art department, code department, we had people that were, you know, very experienced when they started this project, that had seen a lot of things. So not a lot of things like fundamentally surprised us about this. I guess the only thing that was surprising is how challenging it still was, despite kind of knowing what would happen if you scale up. And you know, it's just challenging. It's challenging to get away from sort of tight monolithic structures that you've built that are very, very efficient, where you're centralizing the decision-making process to be fast. But then obviously as you're scaling up, you can't just rely on the same shoulders to carry the entire weight. So a big thing that's happening at Sandbox over the last years is that more and more and more work becomes distributed amongst teams. There's more autonomous units working on particular parts of the game. And I think that is absolutely the correct thing, because it also means that we're capitalizing on the diverse ideas that are in the team, right? Like,
yeah, more
things
people,
like,
more ideas.
Brought this up a few times now, but for example, the HUD editor, I don't think that's something that would have sprung up if we, you know, keep controlling everything that's happening in the game from a central perspective. That only kind of happens if one team takes the initiative and says, you know, we know this is a lot of work, but we're willing to take it on.
Now, I do like to sit down. Everyone I've ever sat down with from SBI, you know, I have a few questions that give me an insight into the person and the gamer, because we're all gamers at heart. That's why we're here. That's why we do what we do. Now, I feel it's a very harsh term. I don't like the term yellow zone warrior because I feel that it sends the wrong message. But I have heard this term bandied about a little bit, and I'm not labeling you, Robin, but I would like you to tell me the type of Albion player you are.
I mean, obviously, there's always the question: do the devs play? So, I mean, obviously, I play less Albion than I would like to. Just to get that out there. The reality is that, like, playing in a guild, which I think, for me, would be the ideal way of playing Albion, is not really accessible to me because I don't have room for the commitment between work and the family.
You're not secretly in a guild then?
I'm not currently, no. Not saying that we haven't done that in the past.
I know. I have a shot caller that works at SBI. They never know.
No, but like for over the course of the production, for the majority of that period, I've been kind of the solo Albion player, which I think is not the ideal way to play Albion in many ways, because there's obviously a lot of social and guild components.
That's really interesting though, but then you've seen the solo improvements over the years, because launch Albion was, you kind of had to get into a guild to do the majority of content. Versus Albion now, you could never touch guilds and you probably won't run out of things to do.
Yeah, and it actually, like, I've found myself being more stuck in particular, like actually sticking to the game for extended periods to play a particular content.
Yeah.
I mean, what we do is we have regular dev nights where we play, then maybe arenas to train some.
I've heard it gets heated as well.
It can get heated. We have some people who are much better and some people that are on a kind of lower experience level.
So where would you rate yourself?
Oh, I'm definitely being carried by my team.
Out of 10 as a PvPer.
Oh, I'm terrible. No, I'm terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I come from a shooter background, right? I'd say I'm decent at shooters. When I started my career as a game dev, in a way, as an amateur.
You made a Half-Life mod.
I made a Half-Life 1 mod, yeah. And like obviously back then one was consuming everything that was there, like all the mods.
Yeah.
And actually I feel that was a huge inspiration to my career, because mods back then, and probably today still, are such a creative space where so much is going on. And obviously we owe quite a lot of games nowadays to modders that have
I mean, some games survive
invented
on
genres essentially.
And so that was your little
that was my kind of start. I mean, I wasn't involved in any of those big ones, but that was the world I was initially active in. But anyway, back to me as an Albion player. So yeah, if I'm in PvP, I can execute things that I'm being told to do. So I'm probably like a good person to follow a shot caller.
Yeah.
But I would not be the person to call any shots in a ZVZ.
What's been really interesting is, the guilds have their own strategies, their own styles. There's also trends between servers. Like different regions have a different play style. And I noticed this in 5v5s when we ran the tournaments. Like the Asian 5v5 play style was different to the Western. But for the bigger battles, which is the meat of Albion for a lot of players, since the Foundations update, it has felt very much more battle-y, because it's a centralized like siege. It feels like you're in a fight. And that's really, a lot of players have loved to see that and see it happen. That's personally been my favorite update of the recent ones. That was a big game changer, especially for AlbionTV and the War Report. Now, we run late every day because it just doesn't stop. They just don't stop fighting.
That's lovely to hear, because I mean, obviously taking sort of a bet on Foundations, which was, we want to do something to show our commitment to guild warfare, to like territory warfare as a big thing in Albion Online, after we'd done quite a lot of more solo-focused updates. I think that's been one of the main challenges for us when we've been designing updates, is obviously we have a new schedule, we want to be fast, we want to do something per season, but we also have such a wide audience, from like hardcore guilds that are playing for the season wins to more casual guilds that are playing the season but not necessarily to win, all the way to very casual guilds who are just a few friends trying to do this thing or that thing, and then all the way to solo players, which then again go into like more casual solo players, or then the hardcore PvP mists or whatever you do as there's a very wide range of players, and I'm probably even ignoring all the economics.
There's players that don't even leave town.
It's very, very hard to reach all those players with every update, which is why we're not even trying to do that anymore. Like, we're trying to do like one important thing for one group.
Yeah.
You'll see that, I think, with the higher update frequency, that more often than not, a topic will be started in one update and then continued in the next update. And obviously, like the fortifications from Foundations, that's a topic that we also essentially started in Foundations, and that we are looking forward to picking up again at some point and kind of continue on making these battles even more exciting, because we left out an entire part of sieges, which was siege engines or more ways of besieging a territory. But we felt that we first wanted to get an idea of how people receive this, how people play this, so we couldn't just immediately follow up. We needed time to observe. So that's something we hope to get around to. But actually what's happening right now is as we're reaching kind of the end of our push to make the open world more playable for solo players, we are right now kind of sorting all the different topics that we have for 2025 and in the decision-making process for what's going to get priority.
Phase is complete, like the Albion cinematic universe, that phase.
I mean, it will be completed with the next update that you know nothing about yet, sorry. But which will be revealed in due time. But as that's going on, we're also already, of course, thinking about like what will be the focus of the next sort of push. And there's a lot of things that are obviously competing for attention.
Of course.
If we're talking bigger picture, what we've just started with Horizons is to take a look at PvE. And like we said, we need to, if we ever want to have challenging PvE in the game again, not just in hardcore expeditions, but like an actual like open world play, we need to set a new baseline for where they are in a challenge level, and then that's for us the foundation to go on to think about more PvE content down the line. Then we have, of course, unfinished business when it comes to the awakened weapons, where a lot of people are asking, when will we get the legendary weapons?
Yeah.
The guild season for us is always unfinished. There will always be updates to that. So there's a lot of topics that are currently kind of...
So it's not always about brand new content. It's about, you don't just deliver, for example, the foundations and tick it off. You're constantly monitoring it and trying to make it the best it can be as a feature, which is nice because nobody likes their favorite content to feel like it's been abandoned, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's always a balance, right? So if we talk about the game updates, what role do the game updates play? The game updates fulfill two roles. One, they need to keep the current player base entertained and show that we're looking at the issues that the game has right now. And in a game of this scale, everything's going to have issues in some way. Some issues are bigger, some issues are smaller. Like, for example, I'm sure people are asking, why haven't they done anything about Hellgates? Why haven't they done anything about corrupted dungeons? Why haven't they done anything about Crystal League? There's all these topics, and it's not that we're not aware of them, but actually, like, the right solutions to these topics are actually often more challenging than the original implementation.
Yeah.
Like, because you now have to take into account the players that are actually liking certain aspects of your current gameplay, so you have to kind of consider, do you keep it intact? And also...
And when everyone moves to a certain content, they're not doing something else, which then takes a hit.
So we're aware of all of these, and we're always debating the best solutions. And when we come to a point where we're like, okay, we really feel that we have a good solution for this topic now, that's when we'll typically jump on it and say, okay, let's schedule that in the roadmap. And we are currently, I think we are collecting a number of cool solutions for various things that are under discussion for being scheduled. The other side is that an update also always has the role to reactivate people, to either acquire new players, but also to reactivate older players, to get them to check out the game again and say, hey, look, Albion's changed quite a bit. So we always have to strike a balance between making an update good for existing players, but also attractive for people to join the game, to continue to grow the game, because obviously our goal is to make sure that Albion is still a game people play 10 years down the line.
Exactly, and I love the fact that we're now syncing up the update with the season start, because as you said, new players return, also new players join and old players return, and they've got a new update, but also they've got a fresh season. They're not joining and being like, well, there's no point playing the guild season because this guild's already won. Everything is like, right, let's go on a cycle. Let's get into the season.
And there's a lot like the upsides and downsides to that, right? Like the upside is definitely what you're saying. I think it's just a moment that makes a lot of sense. There's a lot that we could do with this timing in the future, where we could do changes per season and stuff like that. The downside is, in reality, that actually doesn't leave a whole lot of development time for us, because our typical schedule is, in that sort of 3-month cycle, is about 2 months development, and then 1 month of just making sure that everything that we touched and changed isn't broken and, gets the approval for being rolled out from all the different platforms that we are hosting it on. And so there's a lot of overhead actually for each release of such a big version, and actually a pretty short development cycle in each update that the team really has to make the best of.
Considering the quality of them, it really is. And I think a lot of players probably don't realize that when you update your game, it has to basically be reauthorized on these app stores. Even though it's already there, it counts as a new product, essentially, to them. Almost.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that has to happen for every patch, essentially. Yeah.
So I've got a few quick fire questions for you then. Just don't overthink it, just the first thing that comes to your head. Okay, so favorite update?
Queen.
Favorite weapon?
Ooh, claws, weirdly.
Ooh. Okay. I like the sound effect of claws. It's very satisfying.
It's just the first weapon that I fell in love with at some point, and then like it hasn't worked for me in the game, but it's still like first love.
Okay, most memorable moment in the game?
There's several. I think like opening the floodgates and seeing the players come in and just like
day one.
Day one is obviously very memorable. In terms of like favorite moments, I think like every time I go into a city and see everybody going about their business.
Yeah,
and
it
like
feels like an MMO.
Feeling that energy of everybody's at the market, everybody's repairing, everybody's doing stuff like. That is my favorite thing about Albion, because the goal was a player-driven world with lots of activity, and that's what you can see in the cities.
Yeah, no, I've already bent your ear off this week about things I'd love to see in Albion. I mean, I get to live every player's dream, really, and like find all the relevant people and tell them what I want to change in the game. You know, that's what every player wants, and I'm excited for the direction of the game. Obviously, the AlbionTV crew is excited for broadcasting everything that we're doing in the future. And yeah, it's been a pleasure to talk with you, Robin.
It has been a pleasure.
I'll see you soon. Thank you for watching, guys. Thank you for Robin joining us. As always, I'm Lupak from AlbionTV. Many more interviews coming here on the official Albion YouTube channel. And of course, you can catch me and the guys at twitch.tv/Albion online with a variety of shows. See you soon.